Hamas has put out an official release seeking to extend the truce in Gaza. The release comes in the final hours of the fourth and final day of the four-day truce, even as Israel and Hamas are still preparing for swap of hostages and prisoners. According to a release from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office, negotiations are still underway on the lists of those to be released. In the last 3 days, Hamas has released 58 hostages in exchange of Israel releasing 117 Palestinian prisoners. Both Israel and Hamas have now expressed willingness to extend the truce. Hamas, however, says it wants Israel to release more Palestinians in order to prolong the ceasefire in this ongoing conflict. The Israeli government, on its part, has said that an extension of the truce will depend on a list of potential hostages to be released by Hamas, which must include babies and small children. Otherwise, Israel says its assault in Gaza will continue as the deal expires.
The framework remains in place for the release of more hostages after tonight's batch, providing an additional 1 day of hostage release pause for every 10 additional hostages who are released. When Hamas stops releasing hostages under the existing framework, Israel will return to realizing our 3 goals with full force: eliminating Hamas, ensuring that Gaza never again pose a threat to the people of Israel, and of course, releasing all of our hostages. Our hearts are with the freed hostages, but our minds are, of course, first and foremost with those still being held cruelly by Hamas without access to the Red Cross, in sheer violation of any standard of humanity.
Hamas released another 17 hostages Sunday, including 4-year-old American-Israeli Abigail Eden. 39 Palestinian prisoners and detainees, all teenagers, were also released. Among the hostages released by Hamas were also foreign nationals, as the U.S. and regional players continue to broker negotiations and urge for an extension of the truce deal. This is what Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had to say.
אין לה הורים, אבל יש לה עם שלם שמחבק אותה, ואנחנו נדאג לכל צרכיה. אבל מעבר לזה, אני רוצה להגיד, יש גם מתווה שאומר שאפשר לשחרר כל יום נוסף עוד 10, זה דבר מבורך. אבל באותה נשימה אמרתי גם לנשיא, שבגמר המתווה אנחנו חוזרים בכל העוצמה.
Currently, Israel and Hamas are split over the lists of Israeli hostages and Palestinian prisoners, which are due to be released today. Israel is reviewing the final list of hostages slated for the release. Qatari mediators are in the nation for an indefinite period of time and are working to strengthen the coordination during the operation, which also involves aid delivery to Gazans on time. Delegations from European Union member states and Arab nations have arrived in Barcelona to discuss the recent truce in the Israel-Hamas war. 42 delegations are scheduled to gather at the meeting, which is chaired by EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell and Jordan's Foreign Minister Ayman Safadi. Israel is not attending this meeting.
The pause should be extended to make it sustainable and long-lasting while working for a political solution. A political solution that should allow us to break the cycle of violence once and for all. The longer we allow the extremists to set the agenda, the more extremism will spread, not only in the region, but also affecting us in Europe as well.
Call for an extension of the pause. This would allow for much needed relief to the people of Gaza and the release of more hostages. The suffering we have seen underlines the need for a lasting political solution.
China's top diplomat Wang Yi will also visit New York this week to hold a United Nations Security Council meeting on the Israel-Hamas conflict.
中国作为联合国安理会本月轮值主席国，将于11月29日举行安理会巴以问题高级别会议。中共中央政治局委员、外交部长王毅将赴纽约主持安理会会议。
All right, David Dunn is a professor of international politics, University of Birmingham. He is now joining us live from Birmingham, England. Professor David, welcome to the show. I want to know from you, what do you think about the whole truce deal and a pause to the conflict? Who stands to benefit more?
Well, the good thing about this short-term initial agreement is that both sides benefit. The Palestinians get 3 times as many people released from Israeli jails as the Israelis do, and they get an opportunity to have supplies come across the border, very much needed water, fuel, food, and medicines for the people of Gaza. And of course, the Israelis will get up to 50 of the 240 hostages released as part of that process. So this is a win-win situation for both parties. The difficulty is taking it beyond this particular phase.
Professor David, both sides have expressed willingness to extend the truce and the ceasefire. What will be the terms that both sides will be looking at before the extension is agreed upon?
Well, part of the problem there is that it's not clear that Hamas has possession of the remaining women and children. So what the Israelis are asking for is a list of the names of the people who Hamas has in their possession. Because Israel knows the 90 women and children who were abducted. It's not clear that Hamas does, because it's not clear whether Hamas has control of those individuals. We learned from the Prime Minister of Qatar that actually other groups, including Palestinian Islamic Jihad and other gangsters, may actually have control of those individuals. So the Israelis are wondering whether Hamas has them, or indeed whether they're still alive as a consequence of the abduction or the military action that's taken place in Gaza subsequently. So Israel is very concerned that actually the Hamas side may be bluffing in their promise to try and release more women and children as part of that process. Hamas also isn't keen to release the non-women and children. They have a number of Israeli soldiers in their possession, and they're demanding a much higher price for their release in subsequent negotiations. So, as I said, the first phase of releasing 50 hostages is the easy part. The more difficult part is the reassurance that these people are alive, and the terms of the new agreement going forward will be potentially more difficult. What Israel has said is, we will keep stopping military action for every day that you release 10 prisoners. It's not clear that that is something which Hamas can and will deliver on. So at this stage, it's not necessarily clear, despite all the calls internationally for there to be a case of a ceasefire, that this is something which the Israelis will agree to.
Professor, finally, Israel still insists that they will proceed with their actions on Gaza and Hamas. Let's think about that for a moment. If Hamas does agree to free all the 240 hostages, what will be the bargaining chip? Or rather, what will it take for the war to end, at least on Israel's side?
Israel has made it very clear that they want to pursue military action. Now, whether it will be on the same ferocious scale as they did in the north is unclear, because what they've done is effectively kettle all the Palestinian population into the bottom half of Gaza. So any resumption of the same sort of airstrikes on Gaza following this pause will be met by even wider condemnation, because the civilian death toll would be even higher, given the increased concentration of population in that area. So they may well resume military action, but it's unlikely to be of the kind that was done previously. It may well involve using insurgent groups of commandos to go in, or things like that, rather than necessarily the widespread bombing that we've seen previously. But it's not clear to the international community that Israel has a clear strategy. They talk about this need to destroy Hamas and to make it incapable of attacking Israel again. It's not clear how they do that, given the concentration of humanity that's now in southern Gaza. And that's partly why the international community, including the Americans and the Europeans, the Secretary General of NATO, and a whole variety of other voices, are calling for Israel to stop, because it's not clear that actually Israel has a means to achieve the objectives that it states.
All right, I've been talking to Professor of International Politics, University of Birmingham, Professor David Dunn. Thank you very much for talking to us today.
Always a pleasure.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.